Oh, we got some people waiting. Honk. We got a honk in the chat.
Okay.
So how are you doing, everybody? We're just gonna wait a couple of minutes for some people to start logging on here. This timing worked out perfect. I talked to Tom earlier, asked if he could jump on with us, and the original plan was going to be for 8 o'clock. But as all of you were just on the previous stream, paying attention to what's been going on at the commission, you can all obviously tell how it took us until 8:38 to get here, and we are here now, though. And Paula says, "Hey, Tom."
Yeah, saw that. I'm doing well. It's going good.
So, yeah, so this is how I kind of wanted to start this off. I see, Tom, the last day or so, couple days, you've been giving a briefing kind of at the end of the day as to what's gone on at the commission, which I think is super helpful because let's be honest, not everybody has the time to be engaged in this all day like we are currently, very understandably. And, shout out to all those people who are living your life normally because you're doing just as much work by doing that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna do a screen share here, and
I gotta give a shout out to Nicole. I think she might be watching. Because anyway, no, it's a special one for Nicole because I was a touch rude to her on my text with her today. But anyway, I'm just playing around at everybody else's expense.
We can always give a shout out to Nicole. I love her. Okay. I'm going to go get this video put up, and we're going to watch this video quick together, and then you can take us through it.
Sure.
Share system audio, share. Okay.
That's today.
That's today? Whoops.
Yeah, I'm still.
You're right, it is. There we go. That's yesterday's.
Yeah.
What would I do without you?
It's good face freeze.
Hey?
That's a good face freeze to be in.
And I was just watching some of the testimony that was Brendan Miller, who was cross-examining the two witnesses from the government of Canada, in particular people from the intelligence community.
Hold on a second here, folks.
All right. Bit of bandwidth, eh?
Yeah, amateur hour over here with Rob Primo.
You better watch it. Michelle Brown might come and give you a ticket.
I know, eh? She hasn't given me enough. Okay, let's try this again.
Sure.
And I was just watching some of the testimony that was Brendan Miller, who was cross-examining the two witnesses from the government of Canada, in particular people from the intelligence community. And as usual, Brendan just knocked it out of the park. It was absolutely outstanding to watch. And I posted it on Twitter. There are other videos out there to show that part of the cross-examination from Brendan. And you can watch that with Rob Primo, or you could probably watch it on More Campaign. Either sources are great. But here's the thing. I've been sitting in this inquiry for the entire time. I've yet to hear one shred of evidence that this convoy was anything but peaceful, that there was ever any justification for invoking the Emergency Act. And as Brendan stated in his opening remarks, you'll never hear evidence to suggest that it was required under Section 2 of the CSIS Act. And yet again, we heard more confirmation of this. So I want to switch gears just a little bit, and I want to talk about something because, every day that I go in the previous few weeks, there was a lady out front. She would call me a terrorist, insurrectionist, a traitor to my country, all sorts of stuff. I wasn't the only one. And, on social media, we get this saying quite often. So I want to switch gears a little bit to the MOU, because this seems to be the area that most people struggle with, understanding what the MOU is, and they somehow use that as a justification to believe that we were all somehow insurrectionists and terrorists. And so I want you to send this video to those people that hate the convoy for being treasonous, because this is exactly specifically for them. Usually when you try to overthrow a government, it involves some form of kinetic energy, not Canada Post. It is not illegal to submit a memorandum to your government, to the government of, or Governor General of Canada, and ask the Governor General to dissolve the government. This document was not written by lawyers. It was written by Canadians that thought they were actually triggering some sort of a real mechanism within our legal and parliamentary framework. They did it believing that what they were doing was legal and was a proper mechanism. And then they sent it through registered mail. Does that sound like it's insurrection? Does it sound like somebody wants to overthrow the government? Or do you think it sounds like desperate people that want to see change in the government, and they were using something that they believed to be a legal mechanism within this government to get them to step down? So I want you to think about that when you next time you call me a terrorist. Hi everybody. Today is the 14th of November.
That's really weird to watch yourself do videos like that.
I know. I was just thinking that for you, because
Yeah.
I've been on a couple streams before and people are like, yeah, we're going to tee up this video and then you can kind of take us through it. And I'm like watching myself and I'm like, man, I do not like watching myself like that at all.
Well, I don't even know anyone who likes the sound of their voice on an answering machine, let alone having to sit through your own video, right?
Yeah. So I think it's important, you know, you've brought this to people's attention a couple times, but just the MOU once again. I agree with you completely. Really good intentions. People are desperate and they didn't really know what to do. And some people thought that signing a piece of paper might be a legal way to move forward with this. So yeah, maybe if you can just explain it a little bit more clearer.
So this is a Canada Unity document. And Canada Unity, I know they've been working on this since 2021. And it was, James Botter testified, and he said, look, it was written by 2 truckers. That's it, right? Not lawyers. I testified, Keith Wilson testified. He said, look, it's not a very sophisticated document. And what actually surprised me when I testified was that I thought I actually did read the MOU during the convoy, but when they put the MOU in front of me when I was testifying, I realized it was a 15-page long document. I didn't actually read it, which is interesting. I must have read some sort of a press thing. Sorry, Eva just walked in. I'm on with Rob.
Eva.
Yeah, I'm on live with Rob. So anyway, she wants to say hi.
I would love for her to say hi.
Say hi to everybody, Eva. Because now she's going to censor anything I say.
Hi.
Hi.
My trucker jacket.
Yeah.
I love it. How are you today?
Oh, so good. So good.
You're on live with everybody.
I heard.
Yeah. It's nice to see you. I'm waiting for you to sit down with us next.
Anytime. I'm happy to. We're happy
I'd love
to talk to our friend Brenda Lucky.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was very hard for me to watch, and I can only imagine you all watching it in person. You know.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all we could say about that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll leave you with Tom.
Okay.
All right.
Right.
Good seeing you.
So
why don't we tell everybody actually briefly, because you know, Eva is a big part of the team, and she's not always all over the media. So maybe quickly, who's Eva for the people that don't know?
So Eva and Keith were a group of 5 lawyers. They were part of a group of 5 lawyers that came to the convoy on around the 2nd of February, and the other three out of the 5 actually, you know, went to various locations and eventually went back to Alberta or other locations. But Eva and Keith both stayed with us the entire time during the convoy, and so
and thank God for that.
Thank God they did. Thank God they did. Hold on. So thank God they did, and we've stayed in touch because both Eva and Keith are representing us on Paul Champ's 306, it might be $326 million lawsuit that we're all under now, from a group of local residents that are chasing a massive ambulance and hoping for a big payday. And there's only a small group of us that are on that lawsuit. But myself and Tamara and Danny Bulford are on that, and none of us even own a truck, let alone a horn. But since when in this country do you deserve, or should you be sued for $306 million for noise? When somebody on Twitter recently pointed out that they have like Blues Fest here, they've got all sorts of activities in the city that go on for weeks, but yet horns is worth $306 million. Anyway,
well, when you're speaking against the system that's abusing you,
yes.
Tom, you're a bad boy. That'll cost you some money.
Yeah, you would have thought that maybe instead of going after us, Paul Champ may have gone after, I don't know, the government or the city, something like that, because the police and the city are the ones that brought the convoy right into Wellington. I don't know. You could split this thing 20 different ways, but anyway, we seem to be the ones on the receiving end of Paul Champ's lawsuit. But the irony is, we're the very people in this country that have been pushing back against the government. And the ones that are actually trying to uphold the Charter of Rights and Freedoms are the ones being sued for more money than God. So,
yeah,
that's a little bit disgusting in my book. And from what I know, Paul Champ isn't a very nice person, because I happened to speak to Danny Bulford's wife one day at the commission, and Paul Champ said some pretty disgustingly rude things to Danny's wife, unfortunately.
Wow. Yeah, you know what? That doesn't surprise me at all, to be honest with you. I'm not going to bring up what was said, but the only time I've ever seen this commission get a little bit out of control and disrespectful was with a comment that Mr. Champ made as he was leaving the stand there. I know you know what I'm talking about.
Oh,
it was just it totally it didn't look good for someone who's representing the city. It showed a lack of being able to restrain yourself. It showed a lack of being able to control your emotions. And I think just everyone in the room who sits in the truth, just standing there and taking it and not repeating, speaks volumes.
Yeah. He's just not a very good lawyer, and I don't think he's all that good of a person either.
Yeah. So back on to yesterday, because me and you, we can just travel all over the place and talk all night. Some big developments yesterday. Some really big things came out. I'm sure you're aware of a couple of the things that I'm talking about. I think the biggest development probably would have been when Rob Stewart admitted what he did on the stand. Do you want to go into that a little bit?
Well, let me just kind of look at it from this point of view. If you look at Brendan's tactic when he was cross-examining him, and it was just, he was getting them to agree. It was like, yes, 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 yes. And then finally he put it to him. He said, so you agree with me that this, like his final punchline that he was getting to. And then the guy said, no. It's like, well, you just contradicted everything that you just disagreed with. And it was very weird to see that level of agreement. And then right on the finish line, he disagreed with everything that he had just said. But there was this long pause, right? There was this long pause before he answered the final question, right? Which is, it's just bizarre in the fact that you got the sense that before he answered that final question, he was thinking, how do I protect my boss so that I can keep my job, right? Because Brendan was talking to him about different areas of law, like knowing the difference between suspicion, reasonable suspicion, and reasonable grounds, stuff like that. And the guy didn't even know the difference between the two things, right? And so as he's crossing him and as he's talking to him and he's saying, okay, but all these people recommended that you don't invoke the Emergency Act, that there's no grounds, nobody asked for it. And then he says, well, the cabinet decided that their interpretation of the law was that it was justified, even though all of the experts, the so-called experts within intelligence and policing all said, don't do it. CSIS, the director of CSIS, came right out and said, if you do this, what you're going to do is inspire more IMVE and anti-government sentiment. So don't do it. It's a bad idea. Long-term, it's a very bad idea. But he said that, cabinet interpreted the law very differently. So this makes a really bad case for when you're talking about government experts, right? Follow the science, right? Follow the experts. But now when the experts are all telling you, somehow that's inconvenient. And as cabinet, you are going to make your own legal interpretation of the law in an area. And by the way, he asked him, does Justin Trudeau have any training in policing or intelligence? And the guy says, well, I don't know. Well, how much training in intelligence and law do you get in drama teacher school?
Right.
I hope very little. And so basically Brandon called him out on it and said, he doesn't know what he's doing. Right. But you could see these are in the beginning, even Brandon asked him, what's your experience? And he had very, very little. He had some experience in law enforcement going after financial crimes in his previous role. He's only been in that job that he currently sits in since July. So, it's just, you punch holes in their story day after day after day after day.
Yeah, and I mean, my interpretation of a lot of what's gone on is, we realized that our voices weren't being heard at a municipal level. They weren't being heard at a provincial level. They weren't being heard at a federal level. And then, we're hearing about all these, even with people who have oppositional views, and they have some frustration about everything that's going on. And I keep trying to relay to them, like, the federal government didn't even try and reach out to talk. They didn't try and even come out with a solution. Like, they didn't even get a chance. They would have rather shown up and used brute force to clear things than even attempt a peaceful resolution. And that should speak volumes as to where we are in this country right now.
Yeah, and it absolutely does. In right across the country, at both the policing and the government levels, all three levels of government, right across the board. Every organization in this country, their default mechanism was to either use police as an option to clear out any protest, or use a bazooka like the Emergency Act. And yet the police walked a very fine line. Okay. And I would say there's a big difference between what I'm hearing from RCMP and municipal police versus the OPP. And I would offer this, and I want to be careful because I often get attacked for, supporting the police. And I walk a fine line because there's giving credit where it's due, and there's calling out the bullshit when you deserve to be called out. And so I want to say that, there were elements within the Ottawa police that, even Peter Slowly in the beginning was saying, hey, this is probably not a policing solution. This is probably a political solution. But he got steamrolled by his own people and then various levels of the government. Then you look at the RCMP, and I mean, if you look at Brenda Lucky's testimony today, my God, I can't even comprehend how Brenda Lucky has risen to the stratosphere of being the head federal police officer in this country, reporting directly to Justin Trudeau and Minister of Public Safety. Like, it baffles me. It stuns me that she's in the position that she's in, and I think she should resign. And interestingly, she actually made a sort of slight offhand comment today where she said, well, I don't want to leave this for my replacement.
I heard that, and that's
yeah.
As soon as I heard her say that, I'm like, did I hear that right? Because I can't remember the exact context, but it was like what you said. It was something along the lines of, we need to get this cleared up because I don't want to leave this issue for the next person to step in my position.
Yeah, and to me, I'm hearing rumors because I'm in Ottawa and I know very few people that are connected politically, very, very few. But I'm hearing rumors that it's like the show Survivor after the merge, when it's all individual tribal council, and there's about 5 or 6 of them that are all just trying to make it to the next tribal council. So you're hearing a bunch of names being thrown out there as possible potential people voted off of the island. And what's interesting is, we could rap about this all bloody night long, but I think Freeland will probably be gone and be in bizarre world that we live in. Chrystia Freeland's going to be in charge of NATO soon, but let's not peel that onion because that's like, people aren't going to be able to sleep tonight. Yeah. So if we look at all this stuff, this crazy amount of incompetence, what it comes down to again is that every police department, except for the OPP, because the OPP produced a document telling or advising the government to actually come out and talk to us. They actually advised that, and that plan was briefed to cabinet on the 13th of February, and they pushed it aside and said, no, we're not going to talk to those people.
And can I ask, was that Baudouin that set that up?
Yeah.
I thought so.
He's the one who produced that document and advised. That was the mic drop that Brendan did with him. He advised that they come out and actually talk to us, and they just ignored another expert. And Baudouin is actually an expert within policing and what he's talking about and what he's doing in terms of police liaison with protests. He's an expert in that field. Combine that with Inspector Morris, who is an expert in intelligence for the OPP. And they all said the same thing. And they were all trying to get the elected officials in a position to make good decisions based on objective, quantifiable intelligence and evidence, and then recommended that they actually talk to us, because this was not really considered a police solution. But the politicians were just hell-bent on disregarding everybody's Section 2 charter right to peacefully assemble. And this is the thing that, listening to the testimony today just infuriates me. Out of one side of their mouth, they say, yeah, you've got a charter right. Every one of them, they'll throw out, you've got a charter right to protest. But that's only if it's not convenient, right? And the last guy here, the deputy RCMP commissioner that was testifying at the end of the day, it's infuriating because what they were trying to do was set up a alternative protest site away from where they were in Coutts. And it's like, then why in the hell would you protest if you want to move us somewhere where we're insignificant and we're not being heard and we have no impact and we have no leverage? But this is, you have a charter right to protest until it bugs me, until it's inconvenient. And then I'm going to come in with my jackboots and kick the shit out of you. And the other thing that frustrates me, out in Coutts, and I didn't hear any testimony about this today, the RCMP, and they admitted to it in different testimony, they were out there, they vandalized thousands upon thousands of dollars worth of farm equipment to a local farmer who had his equipment in a field that had no impact on Coutts. They were cutting the hydraulic lines and using spray foam insulation down in the lines. They stole solenoids, they cut the battery lines and removed batteries. The RCMP did this to a local farmer. This is the kind of stuff, when it is inconvenient for me, you no longer have a Charter 2, Section 2 right to protest, right? So, I get that I'm really frustrated today, and I will admit, even some people are calling me out on my tweets. Yeah, on the twits I'm tweeting about, because I try to maintain a positive attitude about this as often as I can, but I think the last 2 days have kind of been really just like, how many times can I bang my head against the wall listening to these people? They don't care about the interests of Canadians. They don't care about the fact that it wasn't a bunch of truckers that went to Ottawa for a protest. It was every walk of life, every representative of a sample of Canadian society that went to Ottawa for that protest in January, February. The truckers were the ones who created the flame for the rest of the moths to flock to. But we had everybody there, all walk of life in Canada. It wasn't a trucker protest. It wasn't a white collar protest or a blue collar protest. It was a Canadian protest. Yeah. And more people would have been there had they been able to actually travel.
And the one of the coolest things about it too is, and I was talking to Paul Minder about this the other day, is like how there was this whole racist narrative and all this stuff spun, but it was actually probably the most diverse culture I've ever been a part of, and I got to experience a lot of different people's religions, different indigenous ceremonies, different styles of eating that, like, I'll admit, I would have never been in a situation to be around these people's cultures, just out, doing my normal stuff in Niagara. And I really valued getting to take part in some of their ceremonies, some of their dinners, and in learning more about the people that live in my country and their beautiful cultures. Like,
yes. Absolutely. And it did. I mean, a lot of people talk about the fact that it was, a big giant party for 3 weeks. Sometimes it was. It was a lot of fun, and it was a unique experience to go and do that. I mean, hey, had we all been protesting or been doing a Black Lives Matter thing, I wouldn't be sitting in Ottawa at a public order emergency commission right now, would I? But
That's right.
you've got a charter right only if Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh say you have a charter right to do anything. If they disagree what your grievance is, now all of a sudden you're, anti-government, IMVE, and I need to send all of my police there because the leadership of my police seem to want to deploy public order units against Canadian citizens and veterans. So today I'm a little frustrated, to be perfect. I'm frustrated.
I even noticed today they mentioned something about this whole ideally motivated thing about Brenda Lucki was like, oh, like that's not even always a bad thing. Like you can just have an idea to go and do something and that's being ideally motivated. So like if my government's not letting me go to a restaurant, watch my child's hockey game, go to church, and I go and peacefully protest, am I ideologically motivated to do that now? Like, what are we doing here, right?
How can you not be ideologically motivated if you've got the fundamental right in this country to protest? You're only going to protest if you're motivated by the actions of your government. And what it's saying is, if you protest and we don't like it, then we're going to take away your Section 2. But if we agree, we'll take a knee with you.
Yeah.
Like it's hypocrisy at its absolute finest.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, we're going to play through today's video and we'll just wrap that up, Tom. I know your team's busy over there.
Well, Tamara just walked in, but she can't be on camera with me unless we're with the lawyers. And of course, listen, CSIS and Kerminji there from Ottawa, she was with her lawyer. You all saw her on camera. Her name's Eva. The best high-priced babysitter ever. No volume.
I think it's just no volume for you.
Okay. Well, that wouldn't hurt.
Of course, they're saying no volume.
Yeah.
All right, Tom. We are having technical. Rob's not so good at this streaming yet difficulty. So why don't you run us through what today's video is about? Did you say, I have a question first. We're not getting anyone in trouble. Did you say that Tamara is allowed to say hi with her counsel with her, or she's not allowed to?
She cannot.
Okay. We don't want to risk that. I just wanted to know because people are. Yeah. But if you're allowed to let her know, if you're allowed to let her know, everybody in all the chats is saying hi and I love you and all that.
I read some of them and I will let her know for sure.
Thank you. One day, guys, we will be able to do that.
Yeah.
But carry on with today.
So, I was just kind of reflecting on the day for that particular video again. It's just on my TikTok. Just trying my best to reflect on what I was seeing in the commission today. If you there's a saying, right, we had in the military. It is, and this applies everywhere. If you're a person who's in a position of authority, like you get paid, you don't get paid when you have no subordinates or no responsibility, right? That's not why you get a lot of pay. You get paid a high salary or a high hourly wage because you are responsible usually for people or for the functions of the organization you're in. But there's a saying that I used to hear all the time in the military is, you can delegate your authority. So Rob, if you worked for me, I could say, hey, you can go and do this on my authority. You can act on my authority and direct people to do things that I would want you to do. But ultimately, I'm responsible for what you direct other people to do. So I can delegate my authority, but I can never delegate my responsibility. Okay, and that's an important thing to understand. I'm responsible for what I give you the authority to do. But when we sit there and we look at people like Brenda Lucky, I might hire her to be a librarian. Like, she certainly doesn't inspire any confidence in me as the leader of the federal police in this country at all. In fact, with the two witnesses sitting side by side, she refused to take her mask off because apparently she's sick. But meanwhile, we knew on the microphone she was whispering things, directions to the guy sitting beside her, but you can't see her lips moving. Like, this woman has no intelligence, and she certainly has no integrity.
I was just going to say that word.
No integrity of any kind, and she certainly is incompetent. And you know, I can't comprehend how she ended up in that job, other than she's a yes woman. That's it.
I also want to make it very clear to people, I don't want to travel too off topic and away from our cause, so I won't go down that path. But if you guys want to do a little bit of independent research on your own time when this is done, Brenda Lucky has done some things that should have gotten her fired a very long time ago. I just want to make that clear as well. Carry on.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, right? When you are at that stratospheric level of leadership in a federal organization, when you really screw up, the right thing, the moral thing, the professional thing to do is to resign, right? And how many scandals is it going to take for her to resign, along with her puppet master, you know, Justin Trudeau? How many things is it going to take for them to resign? You know, it's frustrating today, and I'm trying not to be frustrated. But the thing I was talking about, I think in the video, or I alluded to, was the fact that we don't seem to be getting enough time. You know, Brendan is setting up the punchline to where he's trying to go, but we don't get enough time. And you know, of all of the 20 groups of different lawyers, there's only about 5 of them are actually talking about the invocation of the Emergency Act, the justification. Everybody else is just passing a hot potato of responsibility and accountability to one of the other groups in the room, right? Peter Slowly is defending himself from getting blamed by the Ottawa police. He's blaming the Ottawa police. Everybody, it's the blame game. But there's only about 5 different groups that care about why we're here. Was the Emergency Act justified? Did it fall within the parameters of 4 of the categories of Section 2 of the CSIS Act? Yes or no? That's what we should be talking about, not what you know, Paul Champ had for breakfast a month ago. Yeah. Because somehow that's Zexi Lee's problem, and it's her fault, and like, it gets to this level of ridiculousness, and honestly, sometimes I get frustrated, and I don't mean to vent, but it's hard day for day listening to this stuff. Like, your jaw is dropping, and you think, are these people really in charge?
I know, right? No, I feel the exact same way, and sometimes it's good to vent, and it's like a release valve for others. And there used to be someone around that used to be that release valve for others with their venting, and they're not here right now. So sometimes you got to do that and help people out.
Yeah.
What else did I want to ask you? Oh, it kind of looked to me. I'm trying to think now. I mean, through OPP testimonies and all the policing testimonies and everything, it's pretty much come down to that no one has seen anything that's met the threshold to invoke this so far. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely correct. In Miller time after Miller time after Miller time, that's always the question of that relevance. Did it apply to any 4 of those categories within Section 2 of the CSIS Act? And that's what he is always trying to set up his line of questioning, is to prove that what you want has nothing to do with it.
Another line of questioning that I enjoyed that he asked tonight, I don't know if you caught it at the end there. You probably did, but he put to what was that gentleman's name? What's the last RCMP?
He's the RCMP guy.
RCMP out west, Coots. He put to him, he said, so, you know, with your tow trucks, you couldn't get the tow trucks to meet your demand. Why? And he said, because they were unjabbed. Had you made it exempt and you let those unjabbed drivers come over here, they could have took on the responsibility of the tow truck drivers. However, the current federal government would rather bring violence on its own people than make an exemption for an unjabbed tow truck driver to work. They would rather meet you with brute force
Yes.
than go down that path. And that speaks volumes to their character.
It does. It does. And, you know, he also was alluding to the fact that one tow truck company got a sizable donation not to support the police, which I thought was interesting. And you know, to take it even one point, you know, one step further, they were trying to get the Canadian military to get involved with heavy equipment to move those trucks. Now, I know we have recovery vehicles. You know, we call them a recovery vehicle in the Army, but they're a big tow truck. And these things are meant to move massive trucks. But the reality is they were saying, hey, we're really disappointed. We're really disappointed that the military, you know, we know they have equipment to do it, but they didn't want to give it to us. They said they didn't have it. Well, what the public has to understand is, A, we don't have a lot of equipment in the Canadian military because, you know, we just went through a big war and the Liberals don't want to spend money on their military in typical fashion. But just because you have the military equipment doesn't mean it works, right? Keeping these ancient things operational takes an enormous amount of maintenance time. And if you don't have a budget to do it, some things have to be sacrificed. And unfortunately, it's the equipment that they needed, or fortunately, I should say, the equipment they needed to move the trucks was not available. And I would say it's not that they probably didn't have it, it's probably that it wasn't serviceable.
Yeah, and I would go as far to say, and I could be wrong, let me know if you think, in your opinion, I'm wrong. Do you think the people of Canada would have been a little bit more concerned had they known that our Canadian military was being used by the federal government to dismantle this peaceful protest? Because in my opinion, I don't know. I think I would have felt a little bit more threatening, but now that I know what happened, I don't really know, because that was pretty damn bad too.
So when I worked in the G20 summit in 2010, I worked for the, you know, a brigadier general. He was the commanding officer of the entire operation in, you know, in terms of the military. And repeatedly, every day during that G20 summit, he always said, the Canadian military cannot be seen as taking a law enforcement role. This is a policing matter. We are here in support. We call it ALIA. It's an acronym that means Assistance to Law Enforcement Agencies. We are assisting them. The Canadian military can never be seen in the public's perception or in their eye that the military is now in charge of a policing operation. That's not how we work. And so when we were in Ottawa, and I gave public statements saying, there is no military mission here. The Canadian public can rest assured and they can relax that the Canadian Armed Forces does not have a role to play here, and nor do I believe that they would participate or lean forward in that. But, you know, and it turned out to be that was actually correct. You know, I called that because that's what I believed and that's what I still do. But I am getting a little bit of conflicting information that the Chief of Defense Staff was actually leaning forward and offering his services to the federal government. But interestingly, in Edmonton, they denied the request for military support. So there's a lot of contradictory back and forth that I've picked up on, because every time they bring up the military, my ears perk up a little bit more.
And also, once again, I don't want to speculate anything, but do you think there's any chance that we could still possibly learn that maybe there were some members there on a peace kind of mission, or no?
Yeah, I got Remembrance Day. I was out in a local establishment with a whole group of well-known people that I'm sure you're aware of, and their lawyers. No, I'm just kidding about that whole piece. The one person you don't have to worry about. We did run into some intelligence operators for the Canadian military who said that they were doing intelligence assessments. Okay, and that is not an unusual thing, given that the nature of where they work and what they do. If they're doing surveillance, that does fall within their mandate. But they were not actively participating in any form of enforcement or anything like that. They're as part of the intelligence community with the civilian agencies like CSIS and CSAC. there is a sort of loose connection there, but it was not in, Canadian military doesn't have its own like spies. Okay, that we have CSIS
Right.
in this country. We have the RCMP. The Canadian military doesn't do spying on Canadian citizens other than electronic surveillance stuff in a partnership with CSEC.
Okay.
That's it. So we
Good to
don't
know.
have. It's not like what you would see on American movies.
Now, Tom, what can we look forward to for the rest of the week? Are you aware of who we can be seeing coming up next?
Yeah, it's more CSIS, RCMP. It's more people from the intelligence community, some government people as well. I don't know the whole, like all of them, but it's more the same of what we've seen for the last 2 days.
I'm looking forward to seeing CSIS testify, to be honest. I don't know if you are.
Yes.
I know, like, a lot of friends of mine and whatnot, we've kind of like joked around and busted their balls because we know we've seen them like come on YouTube channels and kind of have some concerns and stuff. But it seems like, to me, I might take some slack for this, but they did a good job on informing the government of, like, there really is no concern here, guys. Like, not at least not the type you're worried about. Like, that threshold is not there.
Yeah, and I certainly agree with that, because I was very concerned in the beginning too, and I spoke to Keith about this a few times, where everybody's concern is, hey, if they go in camera and there's no audience there, it's all behind closed doors, who knows what they could say, and then they come out of their room and say, oh, it was justified because of national security, but by the way, you don't get to know the reasons, and meanwhile we've been here for 5 weeks digging at the truth. Of course, that's a possibility, but I have to say this: after seeing the director of the CSIS report that's been put into evidence twice now,
Yes.
I really, honestly, I don't see how the CSIS director comes out and gives a public report handed to cabinet in the government of Canada saying, we recommend against this because you are going to actually set the conditions for more IMVE, which is ideologically motivated violent extremism and anti-government rhetoric, right? Which you could end up creating the situations for lone wolves. Lone wolves are the most deadly form of attack that law enforcement have to deal with. And I've spoken to Danny Bulford about this. It is the nightmare scenario, right? So CSIS is basically coming out and saying, if you do this, you are going to basically throw a whole bunch of manure, and you're going to grow a whole bunch of IMVE and anti-government rhetoric. You are going to make it nearly impossible for law enforcement or CSIS to do their job effectively if you further demoralize the Canadian public, right? You've done enough. You've done enough harm to these people across the country for a couple of years. You do this, it'll make it worse. And what did they do? They ignored the science and the experts. And then the cabinet said, well, we make our own interpretation of all this, even though they have no basis in security or law enforcement. But here's the thing. I don't think for a minute, and I could be naive, I'm always willing to be wrong. I don't think for a minute, even when they go behind closed doors, that CSIS is going to support Justin Trudeau's justification for what he did. I think they're actually going to come out and do the right thing. I don't think they're going to be able to counter or contradict the report or any of the other evidence from the OPP. I just don't think that there's any maneuver, room to maneuver to somehow let Justin Trudeau off the hook.
I honestly don't see how they could, with the overwhelming amount of evidence that's come out now. And if anything, this is my opinion, I would feel like if I was in CSIS and I did this good, hard, honest work, and like, let's talk about some crazy investigation. You're watching all these people's streams and stuff every night.
Yeah.
I would feel a little bit undermined in that the federal cabinet, like, you guys don't trust my ability? You're just going to go behind my back and invoke that the next day? I would be offended, I think. It's fair to say.
I think so.
But good on them for putting it out there. And man, I bet you these people had a big job to do, because I mean, I sit at home and I do stuff like this, and CSIS came to my house, and I sit at home with 3 children. I have 3 kids. I'm with my family every single day. We go for walks to the park. Like, that's what we do, man. Like, there's nothing going on here. And they had to investigate people like that too, right? So,
I
mean,
well,
it must have been quite the job.
To pile onto this this line of thinking too, when the Commissioner Lucky left, there's there's a scrum area where the media are allowed to stand, and then they yell their questions for those people who want to participate in their lives, and for those who want to walk by and say, I'm not going to talk to you. But they were standing there and they were ripping into Commissioner Lucky. The media, the mainstream media, was asking her if she would resign. They had some really, really brutal questions. So what's interesting is, if the mainstream media, I've noticed the shift this week, are coming over to it and they're saying, oh, geez, you know what? Like, there's a problem. And the mainstream media, it is so damning for the government that even the mainstream media has been reporting the truth, which is shocking. That is shocking that they would actually do this. And then for the mainstream media to ask her point blank today after she testified if she would resign or why she wouldn't resign, because she's spoken at 2 different commissions and she's giving, wrong answers each time. Like, why haven't you learned from your mistakes? The media is calling for her to be removed now. That is like fundamentally different than the last 2.5 years we've seen.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't want to give her too much airtime, but I even noticed our friend Rachel Gilmore put out a few articles today, and my mind was blown. I mean, and then if she followed up with like a couple very cringe articles, but you know what? I'm okay with that. Like, if you can put a little of this and a little of that out there, and then you let people form their own opinions, that's the way it used to work.
Yeah.
And that's what we're missing from this world. I remember a time where we could go and ask politicians questions all the time. Then all of a sudden it's like, I've been trying to ask a politician a question for 3 years and they don't answer,
Yeah.
And so
well, the role of the media is literally to hold the government accountable for their decisions. And what have they done? That's why we call them prostitutes, because he pays them. They do what he wants them to do. But they're about to bite the hand that feeds them. And you have to admit, anybody who's willing to start biting the hand that feeds you is now thinking, okay, there's about to be a big change here. So I always thought that when the media starts attacking Trudeau, his days will be numbered. That's what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's another thing that's interesting. I think this was last week, not this week. But I started, this weekend, Friday, Remembrance Day. I was having a little off day because usually I enjoy it. And the past few, I enjoy being there for veterans. But the last few years, as you know, what's gone on, it's kind of a little bit of a depressing day for me now. So I was going through all the documents on the website there. And, just going through some of those documents is unbelievable. There's so much up there.
Yeah.
And Roe over at the War Campaign, I can post it after, he put up some directory. You can just type in someone's name and then everything that's attributed to them will just pop right up there.
Yes.
But I also wonder if Commissioner Lucky will resign, and then that's going to look like one of Trudeau's fall guys, like, well, this is clearly where the issue was. It was with Commissioner Lucky, and she didn't let the cabinet know the night before, even though she emailed Mendocino. So, that's our problem right there, and we're fixing that problem. And,
I think she will go regardless of the other ones that go. So I think Freeland is giving herself a get out of jail free card. She's trying to slide over to NATO to become the new boss over at NATO. And Joe Biden is actually, they were looking at Boris Johnson now that he's unemployed. And then all of a sudden Joe Biden said, no, I'd rather have Chrystia Freeland become the head of NATO, which is terrifying. But I think she's setting herself up to go somewhere else. But then you've basically got Mendocino, Agabra, or whatever the hell his name is, Trudeau, and Bill Blair. My sneaking suspicion, it's going to be Bill Blair. I think but he's a fighter. He'll find a way to survive. So if it's not Bill Blair, like, But at some point, I think the Liberals and the NDP finally have to flip on Trudeau.
And we just seen today, Bill Blair was, don't quote me on the date, but I feel like it was February 5th. He was asking for the Emergencies Act to possibly be invoked that early.
Oh, very early. Very early.
And now we are talking about a very, very high ranking police officer.
Yes.
Used to be. Was he a chief or no?
He was the police chief for Toronto during the G8, G20 summit in 2010. And there are still lawsuits going on for what the police under his jurisdiction did to Canadian citizens during that were just there watching. They weren't rioting, they were there, and they were viciously attacked by the police because there were members of, they were called the Black something, like that was one of their, it was like a precursor to Antifa. They were called the Black Bloc when they were there ripping apart the downtown Toronto. So anybody that was on the street went to jail. And there was a guy from Niagara who had a prosthetic leg, and the police ripped it right off. He was in jail, and he never got his leg returned to him. He sued the government. So, this is Bill Blair. He's a one-trick pony. He really likes to use violence against his own citizens.
Yeah, man. And the one thing though, Tom, I think today we had a little bit of a setback. Like definitely not a setback. Sorry. Just, I feel like Commissioner Lucky wasn't as honest as she could have been.
No.
But yesterday was a huge day. Things are looking good going forward. So we got to keep our positive vibes up. And I guess I'm going to ask you this question one more time. It's hard. Nobody knows the answer, but what's the best thing that could happen going forward? It's probably people resigning, correct?
No, well, possibly. I mean, one way or another, if he goes, that's a victory as far as I'm concerned. But I think the ultimate thing is that the commission report comes out in February, and it says, "Yep, you were wrong in invoking this. You did not meet anywhere near the threshold." And by doing that, that's just one more scandal of this government. And it's all going to come down to the NDP, right? You've got 25 NDP members in government, but you got one leader. You got Jagmeet Singh, who whips votes. He tells them all what to do. So the two most powerful people in this country right now is Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh, because all of their cabinet or all of their MPs are cowards. They are morally bankrupt with no spine, and they don't stand up to the leaders of the two parties. So I think as long as Jagmeet Singh says, "Hey, I want to get dental for Canadians. I'm gonna let you do whatever you want for the country as long as everybody gets dental." You're still going to see Justin Trudeau long into the future. But if Jagmeet Singh finally says, "Hey, I'm getting way too much pressure from my constituents and stuff," he may have to flip on Trudeau after the report comes out and says you were not justified in what you were doing. So in that case, you got to remember the federal budget is coming out in around March. And the federal budget year after year is always a vote of non-confidence. If they don't pass the budget, it's a confidence vote. And that's where he could lose, and they'd have to go to an election in the early spring. And maybe he loses. Maybe he loses.
Yeah.
Who knows?
That's what I wanted to bring up, and I forgot to bring up. So I'll just bring this up, and then we'll wrap it up here.
Sure.
When I was going through these documents the other day, and I'm going through them all, another thing I think people should take away from this whole experience is this is happening in Canada, man. A lot of political opposition, the very few people we have seen speak up for us, like Randy Hillier, like Derek Sloan, they were person of interest I seen in these things when I went through. I was howling when I seen that Sloan was a person of interest.
Yes.
I've met Derek. I know you run under Derek's party. I've met Derek a couple times. Mm-hmm. Most pleasant guy ever, but he's usually being driven around in a Suburban and is like not around anybody and has like security detail with him. Like, how do you think somebody like that is a threat? The answer is you don't think he's a threat, but you would like to make him look like a threat.
That's certainly true.
Because it's your political opposition, so it helps you out.
Yeah. I would absolutely agree with that.
And and that's a pretty scary thing. So we're gonna wrap it up there, Tom.
All right.
Thanks for jumping on with us, brother. Maybe we can do this in a week's time.
Sure.
Where can everyone find you? You're mostly active on Twitter, right?
Yeah, I'm mostly on Twitter. I'm on all the other stuff too. I go by everything as always just Tom Marazzo. Right?
Yeah. So guys, take a
It's easy.
screenshot.
Yeah.
Take a screenshot of the screen right now. You'll have a picture of Tom's handsome face, and then you can just put his name in Twitter and Instagram and everything else there, and you'll find him. Book's coming out soon.
February 14th, the book will be out, and it is the
February
1st
14th
of the Emergency Act. And the book
Okay,
is
we're
called
looking.
People's Emergency Act.
Okay, and if people, I know it costs a lot of money to get a book out there. If people want to contribute, where can they contribute at?
TomMarazzo.ca.
TomMarazzo.ca.
Yeah.
All right, Tom, we're going to catch up with you next week because I'm going to keep bugging you to come on here. Can you please send a message to the team there and let them know that all of us free-loving Canadians, we love them, and keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job.
I will. I definitely will.
Okay.
All right.
Take care, my friend.
Okay. Bye.